And a very good evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another edition of This Week in Army Football. Rich DeMarco here with you from Crest Hall inside of Eisenhower Hall here at West Point, the hour every week where we talk Army football, talk about the last game, preview the game coming up. And I'll tell you, I woke up this morning, got dressed, came into work, and fully intended to be talking about Army and Air Force coming up on Saturday. But a sad day and sad news really developing over the last several hours. The Army-Air Force game set for Saturday has been postponed due to COVID-19 issues at the Air Force Academy. So no Army and Air Force coming up on Saturday. Jeff Monken, the Army head coach, will join us for the final 3 segments of tonight's show. We'll take your questions, but the first 2 segments, we're really going to flush this out and find out exactly everything that's come down and where Army and Air Force in this game goes from here. So we're joined here, and how about a This Week in Army Football welcome for the Director of Athletics here at West Point, Mr. Mike Buddy. Mike, welcome to the show. Always great having you on, though tough circumstances tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. It's not great having me on because it usually means something outside of football is kind of taking over the narrative. And so appreciate you having me on. It's been a tough day, obviously, from not just here in New York, but in Colorado and a lot of other places in the United States. So unfortunate, but you know what? We survive in advance and we move on and we keep fighting till there's no one left to fight.
Came into work this morning. Obviously, there was a spirit luncheon at the West Point Club today previewing Army and Air Force. Then rumblings midday that maybe there was something going on with this game. Then the eventual news stories broke social media. Can you just take us through a timeline of today from where we went from this morning, getting excited for this Commander-in-Chief's Trophy game on Saturday, to now really collectively bummed that this game won't be played?
Yeah, you know, we hold our breath every Wednesday and Thursday because that's usually when teams test. And so, you know, I left you at the altar today, I know, at the luncheon, so I apologize for that. But I got called into an urgent phone call, obviously, that we now know what was it entailed to. I got a text from my counterpart at Air Force probably about 10:45. I had just gotten to the soup's office for a meeting about an unrelated matter for this weekend, and he said, "Hey, can you give me a call as soon as you can?" And you know, that's usually not a good thing from your wife or from another athletic director. And you know, he just kind of spilled it out, and you know, we'll keep what was said between us, but it was just a case of, hey, we've got some issues. I want to make sure I keep you in the loop, but it's not looking like we're going to be able to play Saturday. And so, in a true Army fashion, you know, I filled in the soup, who had already talked to the Air Force superintendent. We jumped on a quick little conference call and just said, hey, before we jump into this, before there's a public release, we better make sure we've exhausted every possibility. And I can't tell you, from the Army senior leadership to the superintendent to Coach Monken, we literally exhausted every possibility. And it was frustrating. I mean, we're gutted for the young men who have been here since June 1st. Trying to commit themselves to winning the Commanders-in-Chief Trophy. And then, you know, like you said, we woke up 9 o'clock this morning looking forward to a 68-degree sunny day on Saturday where we get to go toe-to-toe, and it all went away in a matter of 2 hours.
You mentioned exhausting every possibility. You're at liberty to share what those possibilities could have been, what Army was willing to do to play this game?
Well, yeah, I mean, we volunteered everything, right? We volunteered to provide testing, to provide lodging. We actually offered to jump on a plane and go out there. But you know, we all live in glass houses in 2020, so you know, it could easily be an issue that we're dealing with. And so they made a decision, obviously, for the reasons that they wanted to prioritize, and we respect that. And it's a tough situation for everybody. They've got to make a decision what's best for their department. My job is to do everything I can for Army West Point athletics, and that's all I can do. And it's unfortunate that we landed here, but at least I can go to bed tonight knowing we presented every option. We fought to the finish, and not just with Air Force, but we immediately shifted gears. My trusty weapon, Bob Beretta, went into action and started reaching out to any and every team that he saw come up on the wire that also had a cancellation or even had a bye week. And as of right now, we've come up empty.
The Air Force release disappointed to postpone the game. Health and safety of the cadet staff community continues to be the #1 priority at the Academy. Due to the upward trends in COVID numbers across the campus, they've paused all intercollegiate team activities, but there are some Air Force activities against Army going on this weekend.
There are. We actually were playing tennis right now against Air Force. So, they got out of there and they had good numbers, and so they were able to get on an aircraft. Our rifle teams will compete against each other tomorrow as well, and so looking forward to those two teams here at West Point getting a chance to compete. This is kind of their Super Bowl. They've been patient, they've been training, and so we're thrilled that they're getting that opportunity to compete against those Air Force teams. But unfortunately, it won't be happening on Saturday on the gridiron.
So just to recap, Army Air Force is off for Saturday. As of right now, there's no other replacement opponent. Of course, you're what are we, 40 hours out from the game time? So right now, there's no other opponent. What is the timeline? What are we waiting for next in regards to a decision on this game? You see postponed, you hear canceled. What does all that mean?
Well, normally it's pretty clear what it means, but this is 2020, right? So everything's kind of a little bit out of whack. So you call it what you want. What we know is everybody needs to be nimble and ready to pivot. So Air Force does not have an open week on their schedule, again, until after the end of our season. But that doesn't mean they're not going to have an open week. And so we're going to continue to execute our season. We're going to shift our focus to Tulane and assume that that's going to go without a hitch. But if that something falls through there, or the following week with Georgia Southern, and then that following week we've got open, we're open to every possibility to try to capture that Commander-in-Chief trophy.
I know Army's an independent, Air Force part of the Mountain West Conference. Could there be anything done at the conference level with the Mountain West working with Air Force and Army to potentially open up one of those weeks that Air Force has coming up against a conference team to create an opening, and then Army being nimble with its schedule?
Yeah, you never say never. So obviously the Mountain West Conference is going to focus on their schedule and their conference members, and that's an Air Force Mountain West conversation. We know where our lane is, but all we can do is be prepared and be ready and make sure that our young people are staying safe and being in a position so that if we get the opportunity, we're healthy and we're ready to go out there and win a football game.
What does this mean for the Commander-in-Chief's trophy?
TBD. Right, so it's designed to be a three-headed monster, and it's important to play all three of those games, and one of them's already been played, and so it's really important to us. I know Nate Pine, my counterpart at Air Force, is very passionate about the Commanders-in-Chief. Even when the Mountain West wasn't going to play football this fall, he was committed and found a way to have their team be able to compete for the Commander-in-Chief trophy. So hopefully we find a way to get it done. But of course, we're not going to do it in a way that puts our athletes at risk or jeopardizes the Army-Navy game, which is the crown jewel to us in a lot of ways. And we're going to make sure we protect that game as well.
And Air Force, of course, defeated Navy 40-16 in early October. And by virtue of that, if a win on Saturday for Army would have guaranteed Army at least a three-way tie for the Commander-in-Chief's trophy, and then Army would have been going for the outright trophy win on December 12th against Navy. Mike, and thank you so much for running us through all these timeline, all the information, not as an AD, but as a person who works with young men, young women. How tough is this?
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, it's like I said, I remember June 1st. We have a superintendent who bent over backwards, who kept pushing down hurdles so that we would get an opportunity to get back here and get our team kind of in that little bubble. And we've been very fortunate. Our kids aren't perfect, but they've done a wonderful job of being respectful and respecting COVID and doing everything that they can to keep them and their teammates and the Corps of Cadets safe. And so, we've had two marquee matchups on our schedule, right? And it was BYU and it was Air Force. And they were both nationally televised on CBS Big Network, who's a very valuable partner of ours. And we've lost both of them. So these kids lost the opportunity to play, and hopefully we can find another opportunity for them.
Well, Mike, buddy, we appreciate it. We're going to do another segment, come back, talk about a lot of things going on at West Point, the Army-Navy game, Fight On to Victory campaign. So many great things on the horizon here. Not going to let the disappointment of Army Air Force being off for Saturday and get us down for too long here. More This Week at Army Football, another segment with Army Director of Intercollegiate Athletics, Mike Buddy, coming up in just a moment right here on the Army Sports Network from Learfield IMG College, presented by Lockheed Martin.